Welcome to Wake Up with Joni, the podcast where embodied consciousness meets life and leadership through awakened awareness lived, not theorized. Today's conversation bridges the worlds of business, leadership, and deep inner transformation. My guest, Blaine Bartlett, is a globally recognized executive coach and thought leader who has spent decades guiding leaders, organizations, and systems into more conscious, compassionate, and effective ways of operating. From Fortune 500 companies to global institutions, Blaine's work invites a powerful question. What happens when all aspects of life, including business, become a vehicle for awakening? Let's dive in. Hi, Blaine.
Hi, how you doing, Joni? It's great to be here.
Oh, I'm great. I really appreciate you being here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Same, absolutely.
Yeah, I do like to start with how did you become a global thought leader? How did you become a coach, a facilitator, a speaker, all the things? Did you wake up and say, I'm going to be in front of, I'm going to do a TEDx someday?
That's a great question. My mother used to ask me, "What do you do for a living?" And I could never answer because it didn't fit in a box. I remember when I think I was 18, I read all kinds of different things, and I'd come across something called a bucket list. And I thought that's an interesting idea. At 18, I put down a bucket list. I think there were 10 items on it. And one of them was speaking globally, and I had no idea what I was going to be speaking about. Traveling, there's just all kinds of things on that list, and I knew nobody that had done them. I had heard of people that had done them, but growing up in a farm in Oregon, just that was, yeah, just not in my world. By the time I was 24, I had done every one of them. And what was interesting to me about that, there was a couple of things. One was just the power of imagination, just what it can actually unlock. But the second one was I need to start thinking bigger
Ah,
because I mean, it's kind of like, oh, that was just,
life's over now, 24.
done deal.
That's funny.
Yeah, I've been doing that ever since. About every 8 to 10 years, I'll do a whole new bucket list. Yeah, just let my imagination roam, and yeah, we just kind of take it from there.
So that begs the question, do you work with vision for with people? Because that is imagination. And
Yeah.
then if we think it, we it can be so.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a chancellor at the Napoleon Hill Institute, and Napoleon obviously wrote Think and Grow Rich. And
Yes.
yeah, and Bob Proctor, some of your listeners may know who Bob is. Bob was one of my best friends, and he was at my wedding, and I was with him just before he died. We went back a long way, and he introduced me to some very interesting authors, Thomas Troward being probably the preeminent one. I'd been studying Goddard and Hegel, and I read all kinds of stuff. But the idea of imagination, Neville Goddard talked about this, and actually, I think it was also Carl Jung. Imagination lives at the threshold of the soul.
Mm.
And the soul is everything has a soul, everything. And you can use soul or you can use spirit. And I don't mean it in a religious sense, but everything in the universe looks to fully express itself. And what we as human beings do is we put a cap on that. We put a concrete lid on that many times. And yeah, we call it mindset or paradigm or belief systems. There's a lot of terms for it. But the imagination is untrammeled. The imagination, if you let it work, can
Mm.
go places that, like I said, when I was 18, I imagined things that I had heard about, and I could go places in my mind that I physically wasn't able to do at that point in time. So being able to live that way, and Goddard, Neville speaks about this a lot. As a matter of fact, my reading today, I read every morning a study, and the one today was interesting. I came across this passage and I actually underlined it. It's easier to ascribe your feeling to events in the world than to admit that the condition of the world reflects your feelings. However, it's
Ooh.
eternally true that the outside mirrors the inside. Now, as it is within, so it is without. So the
Mm.
in is the imaginal piece. And Goddard is interesting. His take on God, as we colloquially would God in a
Mhm.
Judeo-Christian sense, his take on God is the imagination. God is imagination. And imagination needs to, that's the way that we express our fullness. If we can imagine it, we can become it. If we can imagine it, we can do it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Leonardo da Vinci invented the helicopter in 1478, I think it was something like that. But it wasn't until Sikorsky was able to put together metallurgy and fuel and all kinds of other stuff in the early 1900s that we actually had a physical helicopter.
There are a couple of questions.
Yeah,
So essentially everything that's ever been invented and everything we ever do comes out of imagination.
absolutely.
I don't know if anyone's ever asked you this before, but it occurs to me as you're talking about Da Vinci, I used to be an art history major.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's one of my heroes. Interesting man. Do you think that he was tapping into future timelines?
Oh, well, for me, without a doubt. Yeah, there
Okay.
was a book that was written about him called Da Vinci's Mind.
Hmm.
And it speaks about ways that he actually worked with things. Yeah, Nikola Tesla was also interesting in this regard.
Yes.
But Da Vinci drew some maps that topographically, there is no way in the world that anybody that did not have an aerial view would have been able to draw this map. It
Hmm.
was just, you couldn't have done it. So he was able to imaginally transport himself. And if we look at it through the lens of out-of-body experiences, and I've had a couple of those myself, where you're looking around and going, well, this is an interesting vantage point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I believe that he was able to do that on a fairly consistent manner, just given his writings and what he actually put together. And whether that involved the play of time or not, time is an illusion. Einstein talked about that. It's an aggravatingly persistent illusion.
Yes. Yeah. And so much is being proven by science now
Hmm.
that seemed like magic.
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, Robert Heinlein, any sufficiently advanced society will appear to be magical to one that is less advanced. So when we look around, AI is a great example of this. I was doing something with Claude the other day, and I just sat back with my mouth open, going, "Uh, that was magical."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was magic. I just inputted a couple of sentences and this thing came
Yeah.
out. So magic, I think life is magical. I truly do. I think life is just one continual miracle unfolding all of the time.
Mhm.
And this is where I go back to belief systems actually end up becoming, well, we talk about getting out of the box. The
Mhm.
box is the belief systems that we operate within.
Yeah.
So being able to move outside of those constraints, either imaginally or just through my daily activities and practices, can make all the difference in the world in terms of my experience of the quality of my life.
Yes. Yes. Connection with nature changes everything.
Oh, whew,
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah,
we
I
need
live
to
on
get
11 acres up here on an island. And when we're finished talking, I'm taking the dogs for a walk through the forest.
nice. Nice. We
Yeah.
will share stories. So what I love, I'm pleasantly surprised at your perspective, which is very spiritual, which fits right into this podcast. Have you read Gay Hendricks, by the way?
Oh, Gay's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So he's done my podcast and the book where he talks about upper limiting, the big,
Mm,
that's the title of it, is that box.
yes, it is.
So the cap that we put on ourselves, the upper limiting, the beliefs that we have that keep us small.
Hmm.
How do you get past that? How do you work with that? Because it's not going to go away overnight, but
Oh, no. Well, I'll go back to my first bucket list. That was the upper limiting. It was kind of, I imagined what I knew.
mhm.
And that was the ceiling. That was, oh, okay. I can't imagine beyond that. Are you familiar with Richard Bach? Yeah,
Yes,
Jonathan Livingston Seagull, the book
yes.
Illusions and whatnot. In Jonathan Livingston Seagull, there's a section there where Jonathan is actually imagining being on another planet, and he's
Mhm.
imagining it. Now, he's a seagull. The only thing he knows is fish and the flock and the noise. But that imaginal state, he was able to transport himself literally off world. And
Mhm.
then he came back with experiences that he began living not only into, but living from. So I think one of the magical things that is produced with a felt imaginal experience is not only do we start living towards something, living into something, but we start living from that felt experience. And
Mhm.
that's where I think people miss the boat on vision boards and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah, they'll get the pictorial, they'll get the picture, but the felt experience is a vibrational experience. There's a frequency to that.
Yeah.
And when you think, and well, you're going to get me going down rabbit holes here, but this is where the context of time comes in. Most people think of time within the framing of linear time, that arrow of time, past, present, future.
Mhm.
That's a construct. That's a man-made construct. And when we look at it through the lens of quantum physics, as an example, time literally doesn't exist in the traditional ways that we think of it. You think of frequency structures. Everything vibrates at a certain frequency. And anything that is on that frequency is available to me. Anything on that frequency is available to me. So for human beings, that frequency modulator are emotions, feelings. So when I begin feeling the reality of that idealized state, I've literally transported myself in time to a new, it's a phase shift. And anything that is now on that felt experiential band is now available to me. It wasn't
Mhm.
available to me when I was on a lower frequency. So one way I navigate time, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to take 15 years. It doesn't have to take 8 years. I can begin to get there quickly.
Mhm.
And I look around one day, 2 days later, and all of a sudden I've got this stuff coming in going, where was that before? Well, it was always there.
Yes. And so I love the way you said that. That was so well explained. I've heard versions before and live by them, by the way, but that availability is a critical piece.
Yeah.
And what I think happens in this society, we're very transactional.
Oh
And
boy.
I know, and we'll talk about conscious capitalism and all the things, but we're also very mental.
Mhm.
Mind to me is a great tool to aggregate, collect, work things out, pull some things in, but then I believe one needs to drop it down into that feeling place, the heart
Absolutely.
space, and that's where things are created.
That things aren't created up here, they're imagined up here, but they're
Yes,
created here.
in the heart.
They're created in the heart and the mind. Neurologists, doctors, physicists, nobody knows where the mind is. And we'll
Right.
sometimes think, well, it's the brain. No, it's not the brain. Well, the heart center actually communicates more frequently to the brain than the brain does to the heart, if you've ever studied some of the work of heart math.
Mm,
Yeah, so the mind is the body. Yeah, the
the
body is an
whole.
expression, the whole.
Yeah.
It literally is a holistic construct. I'm
Mhm.
taking information in all the time through all kinds of different sensory apparatus, not just
Yeah.
my brain. And being able to tap into the other intelligences is a huge piece. And James Joyce, who wrote Ulysses, also wrote another book, lesser known book called The Dubliner. And I love the opening line in The Dubliner. Mr. Shaughnessy lived a short distance from his body.
That's actually really good.
And and it describes Western society.
Yes. Yes, yes.
It
So the
really does.
mind then is the
Yeah,
entire body,
the
the
mind
felt
is the
sense.
entire body, and
Okay. And then
the tuning fork is here.
yes. Okay. And then the soul, people often think is contained by the epidermis, this that
This
it's
bag of
in the
skin.
shape of the body. What did you say?
The bag of skin that I
Yeah.
carry around with me.
Yes. And so my understanding is it's more of like an egg, a luminous field
Yeah.
about, and that's the thing with going back to Leonardo da Vinci, his, uh,
Yeah,
what's
the
that man
coda,
called?
the codex. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So that's the luminous field. That's how far out it goes. I
Yeah.
think that's interesting too, because I live in a community where there are people who are, a lot of them are over 60, 70, 80. There's life is happening. You talk about death. We should talk about that and how
Yeah.
everything dies. And that's the way of it. But I think what happens, and people don't realize, is that their luminous field has been interacting with their spouse for 30 or 40 years.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so they've been intertwined. And when that body leaves, the energy of that field is gone. And that's what's so heavy,
Oh,
I suppose.
yeah,
Yes. So let's
yeah.
get you started on death. What do you think of
Okay.
that and
Yeah.
more?
Yeah, I've had some firsthand experiences with that. Yeah, and interestingly, since December, and we're recording this now in mid-March, I've had my niece died, my sister died, yeah, one of my other sisters' brothers-in-law died, and my cousin just died this week. So there's
Wow.
been, yeah, it's just kind of like, okay, that's interesting.
I'm so sorry. But I
Oh,
can see the spiritual processing on your face. In other words, my sense is that you see death differently. It's not as heavy as that
yeah.
multiple losses would be.
When my wife died 15 years ago,
Mm,
it was after a 5-year battle with the multiple myeloma. And that was my first real experience with grieving.
mm,
And to the point that we'd been married a little bit more than 20 years. So that meshing of energy fields had
mhm,
definitely occurred. And it was a beautiful marriage. I loved him with all my heart. And that grieving was so profound and so deep and so dense. And this was the thing that was surprising to me was the density of it.
mhm,
And I talked to a couple of folks and I got interesting. I love how the universe works. There was a program that was being offered by a fellow by the name of Elias Adamson. And Elias is a Sufi. Basically, he heads up one of the Sufi sects. There's 5 sects in Sufism. And he was
mhm,
doing a program up here near where I live called Open Path.
mhm,
And it was literally a spiritual exploration of the nature of life and the nature of spirit in life.
mhm,
And what was interesting about it is I had come across a poem that he had written. This was prior to my wife's death, and I read it at her memorial. And it was just it really touched both of us. I had read it to Pam. And after her memorial service was when I found out that Elias was going to be teaching this class up here. So I pay attention to things, and when stuff shows up like that, it's kind of like, okay, got it, I'm
mhm.
in.
There are no
And
coincidences.
there are no coincidences. And what I made a pact with myself that I was not going to avoid the grieving because I
Mhm,
know it's a natural part of life. And everything just, like you said, everything has a cycle, everything moves. But that doesn't mitigate the sense of loss that is associated with attachment.
mhm,
And so I agreed to work with my grieving in a conscious, deliberate way so that it didn't have me.
mhm,
I'm very proud to say and humble to say it was an elegant process.
mhm,
I actually celebrated it.
mhm,
It was partly an acknowledgement of the depth of the love that we had with each other. But there was also in the grieving, and then I made a distinction here between moving on and letting go. I didn't want to let go, but I wanted to move on.
mhm,
And letting go implied I'm going to be leaving some things behind that I value. Moving on, I can pack what I want and I know where I can go to get it if I need to get it again.
mhm.
So those linguistic distinctions made a difference. So I was monitoring how I talked to myself, got real familiar with Michael Singer's work with both the Surrender Experiment and the Untethered Soul. And those were
Yes.
my 2 favorite books for a long period of time.
Mhm.
And I moved through it pretty quickly. And I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that I truncated the experience, fully experienced it.
So you talked about the density, which is
Hmm.
grief, which is anger, which is pain, which is the quote unquote negative emotions, which we all have.
Yeah,
But I think that a lot of people don't process them. They push them down or
yeah,
away. They're
yeah.
bad or they'll die if they feel them. But they have to be felt or they end
They
up
have to be.
thematically lodged in the
Yeah,
body.
they get lodged. They literally do. They get lodged, and then there's muscle memory. Then there's all kinds of
All kinds
stuff
of
that
things. And
happens.
then they can become illness. And
Yep.
so, what do you do physically? Did you do physically to
Hmm.
process the
Great
grief?
question. I studied Aikido, martial art Aikido for
Mhm,
years. When I lived in Japan, I practiced at a dojo and continued that practice when I moved back to the States. And I worked with a fellow by the name of Richard Strozzi. He lives in Petaluma. And Richard does a whole lot of work around somatic dynamics, somatic coaching, the whole body experience. How do you bring everybody's got a body, so we carry our body with us everywhere, and it's a great place to work. From a coaching perspective, yeah, yeah, you look at the body and you can go, there's some energy blockage here. Let's work with that a little bit. Anyway, part of the process that I was engaged with, Richard came up with, and I modified it, a little acronym that we used in the Aikido practice, and it's all around centering. And the acronym is CFEB, CFEEB, and it stands for center, face, extend, enter, and blend. So when I would be standing in the middle of a grocery store and I would have this wave of grief coming, yeah, and I could just feel it kind of like a black cloud descending. Instead of going, "Oh, but, yeah, that's inappropriate. I can't do anything right here." I would just, okay, get centered, turn and face it, metaphorically, turn and face it. So I'm not running away, just turn and face it, extend into it, enter it, blend
Mm.
with it, and it would just wash over me and then it'd be gone. I literally put myself in a position of not resisting, which actually, when you think about Aikido, it's the way that Aikido works. You use the energy of your quote unquote opponent or partner, yeah, to move them. So I
Mhm.
would move it by not resisting it. Center, face, extend, enter, and blend.
Yes, that's very cool. That's actionable for people. I love that.
Yeah. And
So as you're talking, I'm thinking, how did you, how were you as a facilitator or a coach or a trainer in the beginning? And then the evolution of that, because I'm sure you're very different now
oh boy.
than you were
Yeah.
then. And what
Yep.
is it? Part of that is in lockstep with society. One has to change, but then
Mhm.
also the maturity of you becoming a wise man. So I'll go quiet.
I'll raise my eyebrow on that one.
We're going to
So would my
assume you're a
grandkids.
wise man.
Yeah, that is a question of evolution. And I think actually the way that I'd answer that, Joni, it has to do with the nature of goal setting.
Hmm.
Most people think that the purpose of a goal is to get something. The real purpose of a meaningful goal is to grow. And if
Hmm.
your goal isn't growing you, yeah, you can go ahead and yeah, have the goal, but just know that you're not going to grow into something other than who you already are. So
Hmm.
you end up becoming static. I was not interested in doing the same thing for the next 10 years. I wanted to literally find ways to express who I was. I'm a teacher. I
Hmm.
teach
Your core.
um, at my core, and I'm most alive when I'm teaching in whatever form it might be, whether I'm writing a book or on a platform teaching or whatever it is. But I wanted to find ways to grow into these different modalities and setting goals that seemed, and I go back to the bucket list, just imagining.
Hmm.
What about 15 years ago, I started imagining, well, okay, the healthcare space. Yeah, healthcare in America sucks. It's
Tell the
just
truth.
it's an abysmal experience. And so I said, there's got to be a way for me, humbly speaking, for me to begin to make a difference, to have some impact in there. I didn't know anybody in healthcare. I didn't have a medical degree. I don't have a medical background. I knew nothing about any of that stuff.
Hmm.
But I said to myself, and I started imagining being on a stage in front of a group of hospital administrators and physicians. And I would just imagine what that would be like. And I would close my eyes and I'd just imagine the end of the talk or the end of the lesson or whatever. People coming up to me going, that was, and it was not medically organized or oriented. It was more around the nature of life and living.
Hmm.
Yeah. What's it mean to be an authentic leader? The idea of leadership in a medical environment. About 6 months after I had started that imagining process, I got literally a physical letter in the mail from what is now the American Association for Physician Leadership. And they said, we've heard of some of the work you're doing, and we would be interested to know if you would be open to working with us with a program we're doing at Harvard on leadership authenticity. And I said, "Well, that's interesting." So I said, yeah, yes. And I've been on the teaching faculty of the American Association for Physician Leadership for the last 15 years. And
Wow.
and it started with that, yeah, it was called meta leadership at the time. And then I took the program when Harvard walked away from it, and we ended up just bringing it into the curriculum at the association.
So, do you address or approach it in a way that is about bringing soul into the process or soul into business? And what does that look like? What does that even mean?
This book over my shoulder, those of you that are watching this podcast, I wrote a book. I've written six of them, but this one was an international bestseller. It's called Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey
Mhm.
to the Soul of Business. And it's basically a leadership book, but it's disguised as a business book. And the idea, and this is where compassion comes in. Compassion isn't soft and squishy. Compassion has a really hard edge to it. If you're particularly in a business environment, it's impossible to express compassion unless you feel connected. Connection is a spiritual undertaking.
Mhm.
So the work I do is organized around how do you begin to facilitate greater awareness of the existing connections that are present everywhere in your
Mhm.
ecosphere, in your business environment, or in your life. And then how do you behave compassionately with it? Yeah, John Mackey and Ross Sisodia wrote the book Conscious Capitalism. And Conscious Capitalism was a bestseller as well. It was all about recognizing that the stakeholder group in most organizations is much larger than just the shareholders. You've got a much broader pool of people that you're impacting. And
Mhm.
I know both John and Raj pretty well. And it was in a conversation with both of them. And I said, the thing that's missing for me in the book, and I loved the book, the thing that's missing for me is the behavioral analog to consciousness. Yeah, it's one thing to be conscious and aware that we're connected. How do you behave? And that's where
Yes.
compassionate capitalism came into play. So I started just working with that.
Do you begin with awareness?
I, absolutely. I begin with
Okay.
awareness. I work with a model. My work is all organized around leadership. Yeah, particularly in a business environment, but most generally in life. How do you lead yourself in life, and how do you lead in life just generally? So the
Hmm.
definition that I've come up with and we actually work with is that leadership is about influencing others in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. What it is.
That's your mission statement.
That's the mission statement. That's what leadership is. And I can't influence effectively unless I'm aware. So
Hmm.
awareness, the foundational brick, if you will, in the building of your leadership, yeah, experience. And awareness, I do a year-long mastermind program, and we'll spend 3 months working with the notion of awareness. What does it look like, smell like, taste like? How does it show up? Yeah. Notice what you're noticing. And it's a cornerstone of emotional intelligence. You do not get emotional intelligence unless you have awareness of self and awareness of others.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial.
Hmm. Yep. Harvard Business Review on emotional intelligence. There
Absolutely.
you
Daniel
go.
Goleman's work. Yeah.
Right. So, but what's fascinating, and I'm sure you find this, I do leadership work too, and we do 9 to 10 month programs. And what's fascinating to me is how people don't realize they're on automatic.
Oh boy.
They're not
Yes.
conscious of their unawareness, or they're not aware of their unconsciousness.
Yeah, but both.
Both of them fit. And so the watching the lights go on, that's what drives me.
Yeah.
That's what this podcast is about, which is wake up.
Yeah.
And I've shifted into wake up, but now sustain it, integrate it,
Yeah.
sustain it, and then ripple that out. So you're
Yeah.
talking about energy and how everything has a soul, basically, and
Yeah.
how we just affect people by being us, whoever the us is out there.
Absolutely.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a six-time best-selling author. It could be
No.
the guy driving the bus
Yep.
for the elementary school.
Yep.
Imagine the kind of difference that man can make by being kind and aware.
And it's true.
Yeah,
You know,
you got me
most
excited.
most people most people end up drifting away
Yes.
from their soul in life. Napoleon Hill wrote a book in 1936 that was called Outwitting the Devil. It did not get published until 2004, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, his family would not let him publish it because it went up against, and I say violated, it called on the carpet religion, it called on the carpet politics, it called on the carpet society in general, our
Mhm.
educational system, as
Mhm.
the causative, literally the causes of drift. Because
Yes.
yeah, they just layers on layers on layers on layers of shoulds
Yes.
that
Shoulds,
stifle the
controls,
soul.
gotta do's.
Controls.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My last book was called Stop Drifting, Start Living.
Yes. I wanted
And
to ask you about that. So let's
yeah,
talk about that.
well, I took Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil, and said, okay, what's here? And if you were going to counteract that, how would you actually counteract it? And Hill talks about a little bit of this in his book. But I explored it from a metaphysical perspective. I said, okay, if you look at this through the lens of philosophy, and metaphysics is the oldest branch of philosophy, it goes back about 5,000 years. All of the great religions, all of the great writings, the Upanishad, you take any of the great works, they all
Mhm.
speak, and this is where Aldous Huxley talked about the perennial philosophy. They all wrote about, referenced spirit being the creative force in life. And when you can tap into that and stay connected to it, that's where the magic in life occurs. And that's also where you stop drift. Hill talks to the devil in his book, Outwitting the Devil. And he literally asks the devil, how do you stop drift? He says, well, people have to wake up. When people wake up, they stop drifting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you're speaking, they have to remain present in the moment in order to stay connected to spirit. And there are times when I am more connected than not. When I'm
Oh,
having these
yeah.
conversations, I'm high as a kite because I'm so
Yeah.
connected to that beautiful energy, the munai, the love, right? The unconditional love of our purpose in being here.
Yeah.
But then I'll
Yeah.
go to Walmart.
I'm sorry.
Someone might bump my little cart and I might not be as connected to spirit. But so we're constantly moving into more connection. But that's one of my purposes for me is being in that place as much as possible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that you said something about channeling earlier or connecting to it, just that information coming through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's flowing all the time. I was talking to well, I did a show earlier today, and this topic came up around meditation. So, how do you quiet the mind? I said, well, okay, I've been meditating since literally 1972, I think it was. That's when I started. Most people think the purpose of meditation is to quiet the mind, which in fact, that is the purpose of
Part of it.
meditation. But most people will quiet the mind in a sitting and then go about their day. So it's like they recharge their stillness battery, their
Oh,
quietude battery, and then they go out into life and the battery gets depleted.
yes.
The practice of meditation is about beginning to learn how to be quiet in the center of the storm of life, not
Mm-hmm.
quiet in a little room where you've got your tatami mat. And yeah, go do that. That's fine. But
Yeah.
can you transport that experience so that you become the eye of the storm around you?
Yep. Yes.
That's where the power is.
Yeah.
That's where you can begin to actually be resourceful rather than
Mhm.
reactive.
Yes. Which ties into other, what we talk about here a lot is how things happen for you. They
Yeah,
do not happen to you. And if you
absolutely.
have the quiet of the mind, then you are available for what is happening and what is happening for you, as opposed to reacting and getting angry or reactive. But that's well said. And where I do that the most,
Yeah.
you want to know my
Where?
university?
Yeah.
Pickleball courts.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. When you can do that, when you can actually do that now, yeah, it's being in the flow. When you're
Mhm.
in the flow, you are in that centered, quiet equanimity. People that are
Yes.
in flow are,
Yes.
it's just kind of like they're chill.
Yes. Yes.
They're
And
chill.
the other day, I don't know why it took me so long to think about this, but somebody was being reactive on the other side. And I'm like, just be here, have fun. And I
Hmm.
did this. with no one knows what I'm doing. So I'm
Yeah.
moving my hand down the chakras, cutting the cords so that my energy can be mine. And then I'm grounding to Mother Earth.
Yep.
And then I play like a beast. But
Yes.
that's, yes, but it's about being present,
Yeah.
being in that
Yeah.
moment. And anybody who's played with me over the last 3 years knows that that's not how I was 3 years ago. And
There
so
you
that was
go.
my last vestige, like to really show me you still got some stuff in there, girl. You still
Yeah.
got
There you
some.
go. You go, girl.
Yeah, you go. So yeah, it's rather than fight the shadow or try to be perfect in the world, which is one of my character defects, was trying to be
Yeah.
perfect and pleasing and all the things. And now the evolution of my podcast, I'll just say whatever comes to mind.
Hey, if you're skating on thin ice, you may as well dance. I think
Yeah.
that's how that goes.
Do you think, in your experience, you have a lot of people and you have connection with a lot of organizations. Do you think that there's a global shift toward consciousness?
I would like to think that there is.
Mm,
I truly would. There is reality is a manifestation of an internal state. So many people will, at least some people, I'm assuming, on the show here are familiar with the notion of the multiverse.
mhm,
Yeah, so there's multi realities out there. When you think about it in terms of quantum physics and astrophysics and whatnot, there's
mhm,
multiverse, many universes, many. There's also something called a pluriverse, and a pluriverse is the universe that I experience as a consequence of collective consciousness.
mhm,
So what we are experiencing today is literally an outsourcing of collective consciousness.
mhm,
When consciousness begins to rise, the external environment, politically, societally, all of that begins to match that rise in consciousness, whatever that might look like. But it's certainly not going to be, as it is today, fear-based, other-based,
mhm,
othering stuff. I mean, all of that stuff. A rise in consciousness begins to move you more towards the experience of infinite connection.
mhm,
And with infinite connection comes the experience of love. We begin to listen with love, we begin to speak with love, and we begin to act with love. And it shows up. First of all, I do that with myself. I
mhm,
listen to myself, I speak to myself, and I act to myself with love. From a consciousness perspective, Max Planck, the father of quantum physics, said we can get behind everything. We can get behind molecules, we can get behind electrons. We can't seem to get behind consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the first cause of everything.
More on that. Tell me
The, this is the fundamental grounding of quantum physics,
more. Okay,
that all there is consciousness.
got it.
And yeah, Max Planck, yeah, he studied the Upanishad. You go back in Niels Bohr, Einstein, all of these folks had spiritual, not necessarily religious, but spiritual or access to spiritual literature.
Mhm,
And I think this is how when I answer your question, yes, I think there is a movement afoot on this. I'm seeing the integration between science and spirituality, not science and religion necessarily, but science and spirituality beginning to mesh. The ancient truths are being borne out by scientific experimentation.
mhm.
And those truths all point towards a unified whole.
Yes. So ancient Toltec wisdom
Hmm.
says that source comes down to earth, individuated as incarnations, you and me, so that source can know itself
Yep.
and we can remember ourselves. And it's connected. What I'm saying is connected what you said about connection. Ancient wisdom also says that there is no separation.
Right.
That's the remembering that we have to come to.
Yeah.
And so the journey of being human on planet Earth is that unfolding, is that becoming our awareness.
Yeah.
We are not separate.
We're not separate. Yeah, a fun thing that your listeners might want to play with is a little meme that I've worked with. There's nobody out there but me. There's no thing out there but me.
There is no thing. That's
There's
what they
no thing
say.
and there's nobody. There's no thing and there's nobody out there except me. Everything is a projection.
Yes, yes. Do you work with mirrors when you're working with leadership? In other
Physical
words,
mirrors or
no, Well, if you knew me when I was younger, that would be a really valid question. No, I'm talking about when someone triggers us,
Yeah,
and that is the mirror. It
yeah.
is a mirror. So it is everything happens for us. Here's a mirror.
Here's a mirror. Yeah,
Yep, there's an angry person, and there's an angry person, and there's an angry person. I guess I need to look at my own anger.
it does. Yeah, yeah. I work with that all the time for sure. I will never notice something that is not a part of who I am or who I've,
Mm,
yeah, that
or was.
just the fact that I notice indicates that because it's a projection.
Mhm.
And where does it get projected from? It gets projected from here.
Right.
And I notice it out there.
Yeah. Which goes
So
back to you have to have awareness
awareness.
in order to know
Yeah.
how to work with the mirror
Yeah.
and get the gift of power.
Yeah. Notice what you're noticing.
Mhm.
See, I know you're very familiar with this. Attention, energy will follow attention. It never follows intention. Most
Mm,
people do not know where their attention is drawn, which is where the phrase notice what you're noticing comes into play because you start practicing, squirrels.
yeah.
Okay, what just happened here? I want to notice what was that trigger? What was the noticing? What was the mechanism that drew my attention away
Mhm.
from what I said I wanted to be doing?
Mhm.
Because that's where drift comes in.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So let's talk about people in corporate life, in business, in any business, that they may still believe that there's no place for spirituality, which you said basically that's the beginning of everything. But
Business is a church.
yes, I call my yoga studio my church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Leadership is a spiritual discipline, as far as
yes.
I can tell.
Okay. So, please explain.
From a leadership perspective, people are only going to move as far as you have. Leaders cause
Yeah.
movement. That's what they do. They're only going to move as high and as far as you have moved. Now they can aspire to something other, but you are going to create a ceiling for them. So when you begin as a leader expanding your sense of what's possible, and possibility lives in the domain of spirit.
Hmm.
When you begin to think about what's possible and you use the imagination, you begin to open up the spirit in other people.
Hmm.
Because now this is where the distinction between motivation and inspiration comes into play. Most organizations will organize themselves around motivational typologies, motivational practices. Yeah, let's just put this sales contest in place and whoever all that stuff.
Hmm.
Motivation, it has its place, but inspiration lives inside the individual.
Hmm.
If you can tap into inspiration, wow, stuff
Yes.
starts to happen. And inspiration is a spiritual construct.
Okay, good. So, I think what one of the things you're talking about too is especially new leaders, they play a small game.
Hmm.
It's us or them. I've got to win.
Oh yeah,
And they don't realize how deeply they're limiting themselves. And people can feel that energy.
yeah.
You're not going to be one, inspired by them, and two, they're not going to step in front of a bus for them at all. So, how do you recommend that people wake up to how deeply powerful and important their inner life is in terms of what is then created around them?
That's a great question. I would that moves us into an exploration of the distinction between scarcity and abundance.
Yes, let's do that. And win-win,
Yeah.
win-lose. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
go for it.
So for in most businesses, we'll just kind of start there because that's where we were. It is a binary prisoner's dilemma. It's a zero sum process. I win, you lose. All of that stuff comes into play here. Okay, I'm going to kind of go out far afield here and then I'll come back. Time and space, which is something that we all live in. This is a time and space universe. We think of it as infinite. It's not in the sense that how people experience it. I don't have enough time. I can't get from here to there. Yeah, yeah. So we have inbuilt in our experience of time and space this sense of limitation, and it's pervasive.
Mhm.
So what we end up doing in life is acting as if resources are scarce, things are
Yes.
limited. And you hear it in language all the time. The mechanism I've used and actually this is a practice that I engage in. It's an abundant universe. It's impossible for me to outgive the universe. It's literally impossible for me to outgive the universe. So I begin to look at what happens in nature. I've got, like I said, 11 acres here that I kind of wander around. I grew up on a farm in Oregon. And one of the things that nature taught me is that there is nothing in nature that serves exclusively as a center of accumulation.
Mm.
Everything in nature at some point in its life cycle becomes a center of distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that you begin to tap into that
Sorry.
openness, yeah, is you begin to behave as if you are a center of distribution in life, not a center of accumulation. You're a center of distribution. So as you move through your life as a center of distribution, you start looking for how can I make a difference? How can I give? What can I give? Where can I give? And it's not just about money. It can be a smile, it can be a hug, it can anything, but it's a center of, and it's a consciousness that is rooted in abundance. It's rooted in abundance. And spirit is abundant.
Yes. Yes.
The imagination kicks in at that point in time.
We're back to imagination.
Yeah.
Yay. Let me ask you something because I have been trained since the 1980s that if I win, you win. If you win, I win.
Hmm.
That was a fundamental shift in my consciousness, changed everything. But there are a lot of people out there, even having done some work,
Hmm.
that cannot get over self importance
Yep.
and ego.
Yep.
To know that if they win, I win. If I win, they win. So I would get a little butt hurt that they weren't receiving my abundance or my whatever it was. I was trying to, because they're like, well, what does she want? What she must have transaction. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
So how do you help people get over the self-importance and the ego piece, which are shadows when we all have our shadows, and I
Yeah.
realize that. But if you don't face them and admit you have them, you can't change them.
Everything, I'll make this as an assertion of truth, but it's just an experience that I have. I know myself through relationship. That's how I begin to discover who I am. Yeah. And the who that I'm speaking about is the egoic who.
Hmm.
Yeah. This thing that has got a label called Blaine Bartlett. How does that get defined? Well, it gets defined through the relationships I have in my life. So, part of the way that I can begin to work with this particular question is I want to curate relationships that are qualitatively going to serve that ethos. So, when I talk about
Mm.
leadership being influencing in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal, that
Hmm.
worthy ideal by definition is inclusive.
Hmm.
Worthy ideals are not exclusive, they're inclusive. So, I remember something that Bob Proctor said to me years and years and years ago. He said, because we were talking about the nature of giving, and he was one of the most generous people I ever met in my life. And I said, well, Bob, you just gave $15,000 to that person. What are they going to do with it? He says, I don't care. They can bury it in the backyard. I don't care. And I go, what do you mean you don't care? He says, hey, I gave it. Now it's theirs to work with. It's just energy. It's just
Hmm.
energy.
Yeah.
So they get to use that energy in any way, shape, or form that they choose to. It's their life's journey. Yeah, I gave it
That
a
answers the question.
yep,
Yeah, I'm not responsible for how anything's received.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a
The
trap.
generosity effect has a ripple component to it. So when I talk about being a center of distribution, essentially, generosity is a large component of that. Yeah, my wife right now, Cynthia Kersey, is writing a book called The Generosity Effect. And she just sent the manuscript off to the publisher. But she's got an incredible wealth of information about the ripple consequence of being generous in life.
Mm.
Yeah. And generous with self as well, receiving. Yeah. She was diagnosed with a very serious disease 2 years ago. And before she went into surgery for this, I remember her talking to the surgeon and he's going, how are you doing? And she said to him, I don't like this situation, but I know that there's an unexpected opportunity here for me. So life is being generous to me right now.
Mm.
Well, I don't like the taste of this. Yeah, I could go to it's happening to me, but to your point, it's happening for me. There's an
Yeah.
unexpected opportunity contained in this piece
Mhm.
that I can leverage, I can use, I can give away down the road. And she has. She's given it away in so many ways. Uh,
Mm. Yeah, I'm not surprised you're married to a goddess. We are coming toward the end of our time. I could have talked to you for 2 hours easily.
Same here.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy to have you on the show. Do you have anything coming up you'd like people to know about? Where can people find you and where can they get your book? And all of that'll be in the show notes. And then I have one more question after that.
Okay. Easiest place, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on all Facebook, Instagram, but probably the easiest and most accessible is my website at blainebartlett.com or my
Mhm.
company website, which is avatarresources.com. I've got a podcast myself, The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett.
Oh,
People can
great.
pick me up there and
Get
and I
more juicy goodness and golden nuggets.
there
So
we go. Yeah, we're coming up on 250 episodes.
that's a lot of creativity there.
Yeah.
So you ready for the last question? Okay.
Yep.
How do you recommend that the listener go out and live their most alive lives?
How do I recommend they go out and live it? By being a center of distribution. And I mean that very sincerely. If you practice seeing yourself and behaving as if you are a center of distribution, your life will take on a quality that is not to be experienced in regular life. I'm thinking of Thoreau here. Start
Mm.
walking that road. And
So the center of distribution, like they can be their own Amazon of generosity.
yes, yep, go deliver something
Yes.
uplifting.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Think about how do people feel about themselves when they're in your presence and then do something to make it the way you'd like it to be
Mm.
because there's nobody out there but you.
Yep. And what do they say? Show up as the difference you wish to be or you would
Yeah.
like to see.
You'd like to see. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me on this episode of Wake Up with Joni. If this conversation spoke to you, I invite you to go deeper with my book, Stop, Look, Choose: Your Journey to Peace and Freedom, a practical and powerful guide to living your. I'm thinking you've got 6 books. Why are you talking about your own book?
No, go for it. I
Okay.
love
A
it.
practical and powerful guide to living with greater awareness, clarity, and conscious choice. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It truly helps us reach more people who are ready to wake up and lead from a more conscious place. Thank you so much. Your name, by the way, it's like a movie star name, Blaine Bartlett.
Blaine Bartlett.
Yeah, you couldn't have made up a better one. Please go to his website and check out all the things. Now, beautiful humans, it's your turn to go out and live your most alive lives.